Hello fellow book lovers, I'm Kaylee and welcome to Blue Geranium Books. So today I'm here to film a mid-month wrap-up. So I just want to talk to you about all of the books that I have read so far in the month of December, and just to get this out of the way, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to keep up with my content as I'm posting it. And on to the books. So first off this month I completed A Holiday by Gaslight by Mimi Matthews. This is a historical fiction novella set in the Victorian era. It is what is considered a clean, proper romance, which just means there are no steamy scenes in it, and that actually works best for me when it comes to romance novels. And I really did enjoy this. I think I gave it 4 stars. It was just a really fun read. Like I said, it's set during the Victorian era, and the heroine is Sophie. Her family is a titled family, but they are financially on hard times, and they are looking for her to make a match with a wealthy gentleman. So they are trying to pair her off with a man who is not of high class, but is very wealthy because he has made a name for himself and a very large pile of money during the Industrial Revolution. Now, at the beginning of the story, they have kind of been courting for a few weeks, but Sophie's just not feeling it. But they decide that maybe what they need to do is spend the holidays together and truly get to know each other without kind of the conventions of a proper society, meaning that they're brutally honest with each other, even though that's probably not the polite thing to say on most occasions. So as the story unfolds, you get to meet her family and his family and see how kind of the two classes mix, and you get to see how the relationship between Sophie and her beau starts to grow and change as they truly begin to know one another. It was just a really fun read. I read it in a day, and it just helped me kind of get into the Christmassy spirit, because I'm going to be honest, at the beginning of December I just wasn't feeling it. So the second thing I finished this month was A Christmas at White Firs by Elizabeth Camden, and this is another Victorian era holiday story about a wealthy woman from a wealthy family who has fallen on hard times, and the American billionaire investor who is helping her restore her family home. So this was once again one of those stories about two different kind of cultures almost meeting, which would be the upper aristocratic British family with an American family that is business oriented. This was really interesting because the main character, she has agoraphobia, essentially. She has extreme anxiety issues, and the very idea of leaving her home just makes her sick and anxious, and she has these episodes. And then the hero of the piece, Everett, he honestly, I think he's on the spectrum. It's not, of course, spoken that way because that wouldn't have existed at that point, but if you read kind of the way he thinks, the way he interacts with other people, he doesn't understand social cues, he doesn't understand things that other people just kind of naturally pick up. So this was actually really interesting because in the Victorian era stories I've read, I've very rarely seen any type of representation of people that are either on the spectrum or dealing with perhaps an anxiety or mental health issue. It's just not something you see a lot in this kind of story, but I really enjoyed those aspects. Overall, this was a really fun story. Once again, I think I'd give it 4 stars, and I will definitely be reading it again. This is once again a clean romance. This one is actually Christian fiction. Elizabeth Camden's pretty well known in the Christian fiction world. There wasn't a ton of religious content in this one, which was fine, but it was really enjoyable read, and I recommend it if you're interested in that kind of story. So the next 2 things I completed were by Connie Willis, and they were novellas, and I've talked about them in my Connie Willis video, which I'll link in the cards. But that is Take a Look at the 5 and 10 and I Met a Traveler in an Antique Land. I enjoyed both of them. I gave them both 5 stars. I think I gave the Antique Traveler 4.5 stars, but on Goodreads it gets rounded up to 5. So if you want more information on these stories, go check out my Connie Willis video, because I don't want to bore you, because I've already talked about at least one of these twice on this channel. So yes. After that, I read Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon, I think is how you pronounce his last name, and this is a graphic novel which is just this man's advice for creatives. I found this to be interesting and fun. There was some advice that I hadn't really thought of, and then there was a lot, of course, which is kind of standard creativity advice. But overall, I enjoyed it. I thought the kind of mixed media format was a fun way to handle this, and a different take on, of course, a creativity topic that has been covered a lot of times. So if you like graphic novels and you're looking for kind of something to help you get inspired to be creative again, you might give this one a shot, because it was fun. I give this 3.5 to 4 stars. It's 4 stars on Goodreads. Once again, no half stars. Because I did enjoy it, but once again, like I said, there wasn't a ton of brand new information for somebody who's been reading about creativity for, 20 years or something. So yes, I do recommend this if you're looking for something along those lines, though, because it was fun and there were some new ideas I hadn't thought of. After that, I read the short story A Dead Djinn in Cairo by P. Jelly Clark. I hope I am pronouncing that name correctly, and this is the first in a series. So this is a historical, steampunk, angels and demons kind of tale, where there is a special unit that investigates the paranormal and these beings that claim to be angels, and this is about them finding a body of a dead djinn and trying to figure out what is going on. I found this world to be very interesting. The characters were interesting. It took me a little while to click with the writing style, and it is the first thing I've ever read by this particular author, but I do believe I'll be continuing on because I'm very interested in seeing how this world develops. I don't have a star rating for this yet because I'm still trying to land where I feel. Once again, I think it's going to be somewhere in the 3.5 to 4 star range. But it was very interesting. It was a new take. I love anything set in kind of the Egypt, Cairo area, and so that's actually how I discovered this and fell into it. But overall, I did enjoy it. I'm not sure how the story is going to continue to develop, but I'll be reading further in the future. The next, quite possibly the most controversial thing on this reading list would be A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. So there has been some controversy about how she handled certain aspects of this school and the cultures. I'll leave a couple of links to book reviews by people of colors and different ethnicities and their takes in the description below, because I really can't comment on that because... But there is a couple of different takes on it that I will leave linked below. Overall, I personally enjoyed this story. I gave it 4 stars, and so it follows Galadriel, known as Elle, who is a student in the Scholomance, which is a school that draws all the magic people, all the magic teenagers at a certain age into the school from all over, and it's kind of hung in this nebulous void, if you will. You can't really get out of it until it's time for you to graduate. So all the magical children are pulled into this world because they need to be educated, and they need to be somewhere where they're semi-protected from the Maleficaria, which are the creatures that are drawn towards magical powers. These Maleficaria can still get to them in the school, and regularly do, but it's still somewhat safer in this setting than out in the real world. So as you read, it's explained more and it makes more sense. It seems a little odd in the beginning that people would send their children essentially to a school that's trying to kill them, but as you read, they explain more and more and more. So the main character, Elle, is naturally gifted when it comes to the art of destruction, and people can kind of tell this about her, and they withdraw from her. They don't really want to be around her, and this has caused her to be very jaded. And I think that this is part of the reason for some of the way that she handles things that people don't like, because the character really only sees other people as assets for whatever they are useful for her. Now, this is not just a her thing. The whole school system basically sets up you to need other people as assets, and I think it gives people a colder, more calculating way of looking at others. And because of her tendency towards the dark side, if you will, that just makes it even worse for her. So she comes off across as somewhat unlikable because of that nature. But as the story develops, you begin to see her as a more complex character that has been hurt very much in the past, and she develops some relationships and alliances with others that kind of round out her character. Like I said, I overall enjoyed this story, but I will leave links below to those articles if you're interested in kind of hearing more about the complaints being made about the book. And then the last thing I finished this month so far is The Chimes by Charles Dickens, and this is a short story. I actually listened to the audio version of this. So once upon a time I subscribed to Audible. I do not anymore. I now use Libro FM for my audiobooks because they partner with independent bookstores. So I use them, but I still have a bunch of books from when I did use Audible, and this is one of them. And it is narrated by Richard Armitage, who was most famous probably for Thorin Oakenshield in The Hobbit, or as Mr. Thornton in the BBC North and South. This was Charles Dickens, so there was a lot of social class sort of discussions. It was much darker than I remember it being, and maybe it's just been so long that I didn't really remember what it was about. But overall, as with all Dickens, I did enjoy it. I ended up giving it a 4 stars. I think really it only got 4 stars because I wasn't expecting it to be quite so bleak for most of the story. But it was. It really was. So be prepared for that. Bleakness. I know, Charles Dickens writing something bleak. I don't know what I was thinking. But overall, I truly enjoyed this, and Richard Armitage does a fantastic job with the narration, as always. And so yes, I really enjoyed that, gave it 4 stars. So there you have it. There are the 8 things that I've completed so far this month. I'm in the middle of several, and hopefully we'll have a decent second half of the reading month to wrap up at the end of the month. So what have you been reading? What's your favorite read so far this month? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, happy reading.